The transmission arrived as a pulse of corrupted light, bleeding through subspace like a wound that refused to heal. Krelvash of the Twilight Concord caught it purely by accident. Her archaeological survey ship had been cataloging dead stations in the void margin when her sensors detected something that shouldn't exist. A message still broadcasting after 12,000 years. The derelict station hung in the gravity well of a collapsed star, its hull covered in mathematical warnings that predated the common script by epochs. Krelvash was a linguist, not a salvager, but curiosity had always been her fatal flaw. She suited up and crossed the void. Inside, the station's walls were carved with images that made her blood freeze. Stick figures, crude, almost childish, arranged in hunting formations. They wielded bent pieces of wood, sharpened stones, and curved implements she couldn't identify. Beneath each carving ran script in 47 different dead languages, all saying variations of the same thing. They came from a world of scarcity and made abundance from nothing. They conquered distance with their legs and time with their patience. They are called the Makers, and they do not forgive. One phrase repeated across every surface, burned into metal with what must have been religious fervor. Beware the creatures who learn to kill at range before they learn to speak. Krelvash recorded everything and transmitted it to the Concord's historical archives. 3 days later, she received a priority summons from the University of Eternal Memory. Her discovery had triggered something, a connection to legends so old, most scholars dismissed them as cosmic fairy tales. The myth had a name, the Quiet Apocalypse, a race of beings who had walked between stars without ships, who spoke in frequencies that bent reality, who built empires from raw thought. Every elder civilization had stories about them. The Takar called them the Hungry Ones Who Learned. The Vishari named them Death That Thinks. The Morphic Collective simply refused to discuss them. Krelvash stood before the university's central archive, staring at a holographic reconstruction of a creature the legends described. Bipedal, mammalian, with forward-facing predator eyes and opposable digits designed for manipulation. The creature held a curved stick with a cord stretched between its ends. It's myth, her colleague Thresnix had insisted. Mathematical impossibility. No species achieves spaceflight through organic evolution alone. But the transmissions from the dead station kept coming, each one older than the last, each one more insistent. They are returning. They never truly left. They are patient beyond measure. Krelvash barely slept anymore. She became obsessed with finding proof, real, tangible evidence that humanity existed beyond ancient warnings and extinct civilizations' nightmares. Halfway across the galaxy, on the fortress moon of Jundar, Instructor Thum Razik had no interest in myths. He had interest in results. The Apex War Academy was the finest military institution in 12 star systems, producing officers who commanded fleets and strategists who shaped empires. Thum Razik, a veteran of 6 border conflicts and decorated destroyer of the Krell insurgency, taught weapons engineering, a course with a 40% failure rate and a reputation for breaking even the strongest cadets. His classroom was a vast arena carved into Jundar's bedrock, equipped with fabrication bays, testing ranges, and medical stations for when students inevitably maimed themselves. 73 cadets stood at attention as Thum Razik's 4 eyes swept across them like weapon scanners. Ranged superiority, he began, his voice echoing through the chamber, is the foundation of modern warfare. Any fool can swing a blade. A warrior kills from distance, where the enemy's claws cannot reach. Your assignment is simple. Design and construct a ranged weapon using only materials from the Academy's resource vault. You have 1 lunar cycle. Failure means expulsion. Among the cadets stood Vorn Kess, 3rd-generation military aristocracy, his blue-scaled hide marked with traditional honor scars. Beside him, Zix Theril, a prodigy from a merchant clan whose neural implants gave her calculation speeds that bordered on prescient. They were favorites to excel, destined for command positions before their 3rd decade. Then there was the odd one. Jek'rin stood near the back, unremarkable in every way. Average height for a biped, smooth tan skin, dark hair cropped functionally short. His species file, when curious instructors checked, contained only 7 words. Origin, restricted, classification, mythological exception, authorized. No one knew what strings had been pulled to get him admitted. He'd arrived 6 months ago, passed every academic examination with perfect scores, and never spoke unless directly addressed. His physical evaluations were strange, not exceptional in any single category, but disturbingly competent in all of them. He could run forever. His hands could manipulate tools with frightening precision. His eyes tracked movement with predatory focus. The other cadets called him Ghost, because he seemed to exist in peripheral vision only. When Thumrazik dismissed them to begin planning, Vornkes immediately claimed the plasma forge. Zixthril requisitioned rare earth magnets and superconductor wire. Others grabbed bioorganic components, crystalline focusing arrays, and graviton emitters. Jek'rin walked to the natural materials section, a dusty corner that most cadets ignored, and selected items that made the supply clerk's mandibles click in confusion. Leather strips, braided elastic cord, a square of cloth, and 2 pieces of curved hardwood. "Building a chair?" Vornkes called out, laughing. Several cadets joined in. Jek'rin didn't respond. He carried his materials to an isolated workbench and began to measure, cut, and bind with movements that seemed more instinct than thought. The lunar cycle passed in feverish construction. Vornkes built a plasma caster that could theoretically melt through ship armor. Zixtharil's needle launcher used electromagnetic acceleration to fire projectiles at hypersonic speeds. Another cadet engineered a living organism that spat acid. Jek'rin's progress was maddeningly simple. He carved the wood into a Y shape, attached the elastic cord to each upper fork, and secured the cloth patch in the center. The entire process took him 4 days. He spent the remaining time practicing, loading small stones into the pouch, pulling back, releasing over and over, until the motion became fluid as breathing. Demonstration day arrived with ceremony. The Academy's senior staff attended, including Warlord Krethzar, who commanded the system's defense fleet, Thumrazik's personal combat drone, a military-grade surveillance unit equipped with reactive shielding, hovered above, recording everything. One by one, cadets presented their weapons. Vornkes went first, targeting a reinforced barrier 50 meters downrange. His plasma caster hummed with lethal energy. He pulled the trigger. The weapon bucked violently, superheated gas erupting in a direction 12 degrees off target. The blast melted through a support column. Emergency shielding activated as 3 cadets dove for cover. Medical drones swarmed. "Catastrophic failure," Thumrazik announced. "Thermal regulation insufficient. Expelled." Vornkes left in disgrace, his family's honor stained. Zixthril stepped forward next, her needle launcher gleaming with polished confidence. She loaded a single tungsten dart, aimed at the same barrier, and fired. The projectile crossed the distance in a blur and punched through the target's center with surgical precision. Thumrazik's mandibles clicked in approval. Acceptable. Perhaps even exceptional. 20 more demonstrations followed, some successful, most failures. Weapons exploded, misfired, or simply didn't work. The testing range became a graveyard of broken ambitions. Finally, Thumrazik's gaze settled on the quiet one in the back. "Jek'rin, demonstrate." The chamber fell silent. Every cadet turned to watch as Jek'rin approached the firing line with his primitive contraption, a Y-shaped stick with elastic cord and a leather pouch. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that a toy? He's mad. This is an insult to the Academy." Thumrazik's drone descended lower, its optical array focusing on what appeared to be the most embarrassing failure in the course's history. This would be recorded. This would be shown to future cadets as an example of hubris. Jek'rin bent down and picked up a smooth riverstone from a container at his feet. He placed it in the leather pouch with ceremonial care. His stance shifted, feet shoulder-width apart, body angled, left arm extending the Y-frame forward while his right hand gripped the pouch. He pulled back. The elastic cord stretched with tension that whispered of potential energy, of stored power waiting for release. Jek'rin's eyes narrowed, calculating trajectories that existed in instinct older than civilization. His breathing slowed, his muscles locked. Then he let go. The stone flew. No flash of light, no thunderous report. Just a small projectile moving through air at velocities achieved through nothing but elastic tension and human geometry. It crossed 50 meters in near silence. Thumrazik's drone never had time to compensate. The stone struck its central processor housing with a crack, that echoed like breaking bones. Sparks erupted from fractured circuits. The drone's anti-gravity failed instantly, and it dropped from the sky like a puppet with cut strings, crashing onto the arena floor in a shower of debris and dying electronics. The silence that followed was absolute. 72 cadets stared. Senior staff stared. Warlord Krethazar leaned forward in his observation booth, all 4 eyes wide. Thumrazik stood frozen, unable to process what he'd witnessed. His personal combat drone, equipped with military-grade reactive shielding designed to deflect energy weapons, had been destroyed by a rock and some elastic. Jek'rin lowered his slingshot and waited, expression neutral, as if he'd done nothing more remarkable than completing a basic exercise. How? Thumrazik's voice cracked. The shielding should have... Kinetic projectile, Jek'rin said quietly. Below threshold velocity for energy reactive shielding. The barrier never recognized it as a threat until impact. The instructor's mandibles trembled with something between rage and dawning horror. What are you? Jek'rin met his gaze with eyes that had hunted across savannas long before the stars had names. I'm what happens when a species learns to kill at range before it learns to make fire. The wreckage of Thumrazik's drone still smoked on the arena floor when the instructor finally found his voice again. Cadet Jek'rin, report to my office. Immediately. Jek'rin nodded once and followed, leaving behind 72 cadets who couldn't decide whether to be terrified or fascinated. Zixtheril stared at the primitive weapon in his hand, just wood, leather, and elastic, and ran calculations through her neural implants. The numbers made no sense. The kinetic energy required to pierce military shielding shouldn't be achievable through such simple mechanics. Unless the wielder understood principles of physics so intimately that they bypassed the need for technological complexity entirely. In Thumrazik's office, the instructor paced on all 4 legs, his exoskeleton plates clicking with agitation. He gestured at the slingshot lying on his desk like it was a coiled serpent. Explain. Everything. That weapon should not have penetrated combat-grade shielding. My drone cost more than most cadets will earn in a decade, and you destroyed it with materials worth less than a meal. Jek'rin stood at ease, hands behind his back. The shielding was designed to detect and disperse energy signatures. Plasma, laser, particle beams. It measures threat by power output. A stone traveling at subsonic velocity doesn't register as dangerous until the moment of impact. By then, it's too late. You exploited a fundamental flaw in modern defensive theory. I used a weapon older than your civilization's recorded history. The flaw was always there. You just forgot to look for it. Thumrazik's mandibles ground together. What species are you? Your file is restricted at levels I don't have clearance for. I've commanded warships, and I can't access your basic biological data. Jek'rin said nothing. Are you a spy? An infiltrator? What government sent you? I'm a student who completed your assignment, sir. The instructor wanted to press further, but something in Jek'rin's eyes, calm, ancient, patient, made him hesitate. He'd seen that look before, in the gaze of predators on frontier worlds, the look of something that had no natural enemies because it had killed them all thousands of generations ago. Dismissed, but this isn't over. News of the demonstration spread through Jundar like plasma fire. By evening, every cadet knew the story, embellished with each retelling until Jek'rin had supposedly destroyed 3 drones with a single stone that curved through the air like a guided missile. By morning, instructors from other departments were requesting meetings, wanting to analyze the weapon. Jek'rin politely declined all of them. In her quarters, Zixtheril worked through the night, attempting to reverse engineer the slingshot's principles. She fabricated elastic polymers with perfect tension coefficients, carved wood from the Academy's organic reserves, and calculated optimal projectile mass. Her first test shot shattered the elastic. The second attempt worked, but her projectile flew wildly off target, embedding itself in her wall paneling. She tried 17 more times. Each failure brought a creeping realization that the weapon's simplicity was deceptive. It required something she couldn't quantify: muscle memory, instinctive compensation for wind and gravity, a relationship between wielder and tool that came from millions of years of evolutionary pressure. She wasn't built for this weapon. Her species had never needed to be. Across the galaxy, Krelvash received an alert that made her primary heart skip several beats. The university's AI monitoring system had detected anomalous pattern matches in galactic security feeds. Specifically, a weapons demonstration at the Apex War Academy featuring technology matching descriptions from the ancient warnings she'd discovered. She pulled up the footage and watched Jek'rin destroy the drone. Then she watched it again. And again. 17 times. The weapon. The stance. The precision. Everything matched the carvings from the derelict station. The stick figures holding curved implements weren't artistic simplification. They were accurate representations of humanity's oldest ranged weapon. Krelvosh booked immediate transport to Jundar. If her hypothesis was correct, if even one of the makers still existed, the implications would shatter every assumption about galactic history. The Twilight Concord needed to know. The Elder Races needed to know. Humanity wasn't extinct. They'd been hiding. The Academy's Grand Exhibition arrived 10 days later. A ceremonial event where the finest cadets demonstrated their skills before the Warlord Council and military leadership from across the sector. It was politics as much as evaluation, a chance for powerful families to show off their offspring, and for the Academy to justify its exorbitant funding. Massive viewing platforms surrounded the central arena. Dignitaries filled the observation decks, their conversations a symphony of clicking, whistling, and harmonic resonance across a dozen languages. Warlord Krethzar presided from the highest seat, his ceremonial armor polished to mirror brightness. Zixtheril had been selected to represent her class, her needle launcher now refined to perfection. She would demonstrate against moving targets, aerial drones, and armored barriers. It was her moment to secure a command position straight out of graduation. The demonstrations began with traditional fanfare. Cadets from artillery divisions showcased plasma mortars. Tactical specialists displayed swarm drone coordination. Zixtheril's performance was flawless. 3 targets, 3 direct hits, each projectile placed with mathematical perfection. The crowd murmured approval. Then the alarm screamed. Emergency lighting flooded the arena in red. Security barriers slammed into place around the Warlord Council's viewing platform. On every display screen, the same warning flashed. Unauthorized aerial unit detected. Hostile intent confirmed. Something small and fast moved through the arena's upper atmosphere, barely visible against the fortress moon's pale sky. Advanced optics caught glimpses, angular, black, coated in sensor-absorbing materials. An assassin's drone, next-generation stealth technology, worth more than a small starship. It was hunting. Security forces opened fire with everything. Pulse rifles, energy nets, graviton disruptors. Every shot passed through empty space. The drone moved with impossible agility, its AI predicting defensive patterns faster than organic minds could coordinate. It descended toward the council platform in a death spiral, weapons ports opening like hungry mouths. Panic erupted. Dignitaries scrambled for cover. Warlord Krethzar stood frozen, calculating that his ceremonial armor wouldn't stop military-grade munitions. His guards formed a barrier with their bodies, knowing they'd die in seconds. The drone's targeting laser painted Krethzar's chest with a red dot that meant certain death. Then Jek'rin moved. He'd been sitting in the cadet section, unnoticed and unremarkable as always. Now he vaulted over the barrier, separating spectators from the arena floor, landing in a roll that brought him to his feet in one fluid motion. His hand went to his belt and retrieved the slingshot. He'd kept it with him, a habit from a species that never discarded useful tools. Security systems can't track it, someone was screaming through the command channel. Energy signature too low, profile too small, movement too erratic. Jek'rin loaded a tungsten sphere from his pocket, the same type of bearing used in Academy machinery, dense and perfectly round. He planted his feet and watched the drone with eyes that had tracked birds across African skies before civilization learned to write. The drone moved at 40 meters per second. It was 60 meters away. It would fire in 3 seconds. Jek'rin calculated trajectories that existed in genetic memory. Windage, arc, velocity. The dance between gravity and momentum that humanity had mastered when their only advantage was thinking 3 seconds ahead of the predator. He pulled back and released. The tungsten sphere flew. The drone's AI never registered the threat. Its sensors were designed to detect energy weapons, explosive propellants, electromagnetic signatures, not a small metal ball moving on a ballistic path that required no power source beyond elastic potential energy. The sphere missed the drone's main body by 3 centimeters. exactly as Jek'rin intended. It struck the curved interior wall of the arena at a calculated angle, ricocheted with a geometry that turned one trajectory into another, hit a support beam, caromed off at 43 degrees, struck a lighting fixture, and completed its final vector directly into the drone's exposed heat ventilation port. The assassin's machine flew through the hole in its own shielding. Inside, the tungsten sphere shredded cooling systems, punctured the power core, and triggered a cascade failure. The drone's engines died. Its weapon systems went dark. It dropped from the sky like a stone, crashing at Warlord Council's feet in a shower of sparks and melting circuits. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then everyone spoke at once. Krelvash arrived amid the chaos, her credentials from the Twilight Concord finally getting her through Academy security. She pushed through the crowd to find Jek'rin surrounded by guards, Warlord Council, and 6 different intelligence officers all demanding explanations simultaneously. Impossible shot, no organic being calculates that quickly. 3 separate ricochets. Probability of success was... What kind of weapon is that? Why isn't it in our arsenals? Jek'rin stood calm in the center of the storm, still holding his slingshot. Krelvash stepped forward. I can explain. Or rather, I can tell you what the ancient texts say. Every eye turned to her. His species, she continued, holding up her data tablet showing the carvings from the derelict station, was called humanity. They didn't go extinct. They never announced themselves. For 10,000 years, they've been watching. Warlord Council's tactical mind cut through the confusion. You're saying we've been infiltrated? I'm saying they're patient. Krelvash looked at Jek'rin. Aren't you? Jek'rin finally smiled, a small expression that didn't reach his predator eyes. My species learned something your civilizations never needed to. We learned to wait, to watch, to study everything before we make ourselves known. Why reveal yourself now? Council demanded. Because you were about to die, and my people remember debts. Jek'rin gestured at the wreckage. 12,000 years ago, your ancestors found a damaged human exploration vessel. They could have ignored it, but they didn't. They repaired it, gave the crew supplies, and sent them home. We've been watching your civilization ever since, making sure nothing happened to the descendants of those who showed us kindness. The warlord's mandibles clicked slowly. 1 ship, 1 act of mercy, and you've protected us for 12 millennia? We don't forget, and we always repay our debts. Jek'rin tucked the slingshot back into his belt. That's what made us apex predators. Not strength or speed, but memory and reciprocity. We track favors across generations. We hunt grudges across light years. We're the species that domesticated wolves not by force, but by sharing food until they became family. Thumrazik finally found his voice. The weapon. Why is it so effective when it's so primitive? Because it's not primitive. It's refined across 200,000 years of trial and error. Every human child learns this weapon because it teaches fundamental principles: physics, patience, precision. We don't make weapons complicated. We make ourselves complicated enough to use simple weapons perfectly. Krelvash felt her scales ripple with understanding. That's what the ancient texts meant. Beware the creatures who learn to kill at range before they learn to speak. You evolved as hunters who could hit targets from a distance, while other predators still relied on claws and teeth. We threw rocks at prey that could outrun us. Jek'rin agreed. We hit birds in flight with slings, while they thought they were safe in the sky. We put arrows through gaps in armor before most species discovered fire. Range warfare isn't something we invented. It's how we survived long enough to invent anything. Warlord Council studied the human with new eyes, seeing not a cadet but a representative of something ancient and terrifying. What do your people want? Nothing your civilization isn't already doing. You're explorers, defenders, merchants of knowledge. You remember kindness. Jek'rin's expression softened slightly. My people don't want conquest. We already tried that on our own world. Nearly destroyed ourselves learning the lesson. Now we want what we've always wanted, to find good neighbors in a dangerous galaxy. And if we're not good neighbors? Someone asked. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Then you'll learn what the Krell insurgency learned, what 6 other hostile civilizations discovered. What's carved into 47 dead stations across the void margin? Jek'rin's voice remained pleasant, but something primordial lurked beneath the words. We're the species that hunted megafauna into extinction with pointed sticks. We crossed oceans in wooden boats just to see what was on the other side. We touched our own moon before we perfected flight. When we decide something needs to end, it ends. Krethzar considered this. And the slingshot? Is that a threat? It's a reminder. Jek'rin held up the simple weapon. We can kill you with resources you wouldn't even notice were weapons. With patience you can't match. From distances you can't predict. But we'd rather share food and make friends. The warlord's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or respect. Your assignment from Instructor Thumrazik? Build a ranged weapon. You could have built something advanced. I built something true. Krelvash stepped closer, her academic curiosity overwhelming protocol. What's your real purpose here? To learn, to observe, to make sure the debt stays paid. Jek'rin looked around the arena, and maybe to remind the galaxy that the old legends aren't always myths. Sometimes they're just patient. 3 weeks later, Jek'rin graduated with honors. His file remained restricted. His species classification stayed labeled mythological exception. But across 12 star systems, military academies began teaching a new course, ancient weapons theory. Every cadet learned to respect simplicity, to understand that technological superiority meant nothing if you forgot the fundamentals. And in quiet corners of the galaxy, on stations orbiting dead stars, the ancient warnings were finally understood not as threats, but as introductions. Humanity had returned, and they remembered their friends.